Welcome to Whispers of Turkish Stars. Before we dive into today's unfolding drama, make sure you're subscribed, tap that like button, share what you think in the comments, and if you want to support us more closely, hit the join button to become part of our inner circle. Now, let's step carefully into one of the week's most intense storms, a rumble that started with a whisper and turned into an echoing roar. Sometimes, the loudest thing a person can do is say nothing at all. Sometimes silence presses against the world like a hand on glass, asking for patience that never comes. For days, people watched Ozan Akbaba hold his quiet the way some people hold their breath underwater, waiting for the moment he had to come up for air. When he finally chose to speak, he didn't thump his chest or throw accusations around like confetti at a party. He appeared steady, deliberate, almost tender with his words, a man who understood that every syllable would be measured, replayed, dissected. He chose to be direct without being cruel. He chose to be transparent without parading his life like a trophy. And in doing so, he revealed a possibility many were unwilling to entertain, that the world's harshest stories are sometimes built on incomplete scenes and impatient conclusions. The tale that devoured timelines began with just a few shaky seconds recorded somewhere between heavy bass and low lights. A phone clutched in someone's hand captured Ozan leaning close to a young woman. Their faces hovered inches apart. It looked intimate only because the frame left no space for anything else. There was no beginning to the clip and no ending, only a sliver stripped of its bones. No context. No sound you could trust. Just proximity. Still, in a culture that feasts on juxtapositions, a fragment can pretend to be the full picture. Within hours, the video sprinted across platforms, trading nuance for speed. The pixels carried a story they were never meant to tell, and soon, people were building verdicts out of guesses. From that moment, his quiet became a battleground. Every hour without a statement felt, to some, like a confession. Each day without a post was read as guilt. Comment sections became boxing rings, and fans turned into juries who never asked to see the rest of the scene. Some insisted that the video was indisputable proof. Others begged for patience, reminding everyone that a camera angle can warp truth the way funhouse mirrors twist reflections. A dangerous confidence settled in the air, the belief that seeing a corner means understanding the entire room. Then came the night that shifted the current. Standing at an event for a brand he represents, under lights meant to flatter, not interrogate, Ozan faced the questions that swarmed like bees around a glass of lemonade. The exhaustion in his eyes wasn't the theatrics of fame, it was the strain of being misunderstood in public. His voice carried the softness of someone who doesn't want to wound anyone with his defense. He clarified something simple, something most people had never considered. The woman in that clip was a childhood friend, someone who belonged to his life long before headlines tried to write her into it as a stranger. He said the conversation that looked so charged was private, personal in the way long friendships are personal, not romantic. He said the video stripped away time, tone, and intention until honesty looked suspicious. And then he did something that many forget is possible, he defended not only himself, but her. He refused to let this young woman become a scapegoat for a narrative that thrived on pressure and voyeurism. He pointed out the obvious that people still tend to ignore: no one should be forced to surrender their privacy just to satisfy a chorus asking for proof. He reminded the room that you cannot read intention through a shaky lens, that dignity doesn't owe anyone a statement, much less an explanation posted for strangers to consume. And as he refused to feed the chaos, a name entered the conversation without being uttered at all. Not because he revealed it, but because the way he guarded the boundaries made it unmistakable who he was protecting beyond himself: Sinem Unsal. For years, their rumored connection has lived in that delicate space where affection doesn't need an audience to exist. They have chosen quiet over spectacle, presence over performance. Their decision to keep their bond away from the glare has always been a gentle rebellion against the hunger for exposure. Perhaps ironically, that very privacy is what allowed suspicion to bloom. When two people decline to stage their closeness for a crowd, the crowd often tries to rewrite the story in its own image. Those who know them insist that Sinem's silence is not surrender and not denial, but a posture of grace. She has not posted cryptic captions or crafted shadowy messages. She has not fed the algorithm with half-truths or collected applause for acting out her private life. Instead, she has held on to her calm, even as the internet demanded a performance. They describe her as someone who values loyalty, craft, and family above the flash of short-lived attention, someone who believes love is something you protect, not a currency you spend for relevance. A friend of Ozan, choosing not to be named, described him as shaken, but not by criticism. What rattled him was the way trust can suddenly feel as delicate as glass. When a future built quietly and carefully can be threatened by a stranger's frame, the world outside starts to feel unsafe. There is a special kind of ache in watching an old friendship be twisted into a weapon, in seeing a simple moment become material for suspicion. Even after his steady, heartfelt words, the noise didn't simply vanish. Comment threads still lit up like city skylines at night. Some people refused to move beyond the clip, demanding proof stacked upon proof, as if private lives were court cases. Others began to slow down, to reconsider the speed at which they had rushed to convict. Apologies slipped into the stream, gentle and late. The mood shifted. It didn't become quiet, but the rhythm of the chaos changed. His honesty didn't extinguish the fire, it changed the oxygen feeding it. Underneath his measured answers lived a statement larger than defense. He drew a line that most thought fame had eroded, the line where a person decides who gets access to their inner world. He refused to trade someone else's peace for his own vindication. He refused to place his relationship on a stage just to soothe strangers. In doing so, he reminded anyone who was listening that fame does not owe ownership. Being seen on a screen does not convert a human life into public property. In the days ahead, more voices may appear. The woman in the video might choose to speak, or she might keep what is hers, hers. Another angle might surface, or perhaps nothing more will ever be shown. That is the strange thing about storms, they sometimes pass without a final word. But one thing, at least, sits solid in the air like a sentence no one can delete: he did not counter the rumor with rage or excuses. He countered it with principle. And that principle remains, asking a quieter question than gossip is used to hearing. Will we allow people to be human, even when their humanity refuses to perform for us? For those who have followed Ozan and Sinem from the beginning, this moment isn't a plot twist as much as a test. It asks whether admiration can coexist with restraint, whether curiosity can recognize a boundary and stop. It asks if love can be honored without being displayed in curated squares and blinking notifications. Many fans understand this. Many don't. And between those two responses, the couple continues to choose what they have always chosen: privacy in a world that spins on exposure. There were those at the brand event who looked at Ozan and saw beyond the headlines, who noticed the restraint in his expression, the effort to speak without swelling the tide. The way he said friend carried weight, the way he didn't say Sinem's name carried care. The industry is not kind to silence, but some people still believe that what matters most is how you protect what you value, not how loudly you perform it. If guarding another person's peace is the final word of love, then perhaps that was the only declaration he needed to make. And what of Sinem in all of this? Those close to her describe a woman who goes to work, to family, to quiet dinners, to sunlit mornings where phones are face down and laughter is unrecorded. A woman who refuses to let the noise set her heartbeat. She doesn't act out her private life for applause because applause has never been the point. She is not the absence of a statement, she is the presence of self-respect. She is the refusal to let gossip write the script. Meanwhile, the internet continues to be what it is, an echo chamber that multiplies what you feed it. Some are calling for more evidence, as if intimacy were something you could display on demand like a receipt. Others are learning to breathe again, remembering that they once admired these two precisely because they didn't sell their quiet. The apology posts sit beside the accusatory ones. The rumors sit beside the corrections. The confusion sits beside the clarity. That is how the feed always looks, contradictions layered on contradictions. Maybe there will be a day when the young woman in the clip decides to speak, to say that she and Ozan have laughed together since childhood, that their closeness is not a secret romance but an old bond. Maybe she will say nothing at all, and that will be her own boundary, her own decision to keep her life unturned by hands that don't belong to her. Maybe a new angle will surface that shows nothing new. Maybe the loudest thing that will happen is, again, silence. What remains, after all this, is a simple truth told softly. Ozan chose not to fight with fire but with restraint. He chose not to embarrass anyone to save himself. He chose to be measured, to be protective, to be a person first and a headline last. If his name stays attached to this story, let it be for the way he stood still while others tried to push him onto a stage he never agreed to. So, dear viewers of Whispers of Turkish Stars, what do you believe? Should the private corners of a relationship remain private even when the people in it are public? Does fame require transparency, or does it make boundaries even more necessary? When you see a few seconds of footage, do you trust it enough to turn it into a judgment? Or can you allow yourself to sit with uncertainty, to acknowledge that life is bigger than a frame and richer than a clip? Tell us what you think. Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to like this video if you believe dignity still has a place in the public eye. Subscribe to Whispers of Turkish Stars so you don't miss our next carefully told story, and if you want to help us keep doing this work with care and patience, join our community by hitting that join button. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep your hearts open, your minds steady, and remember this above all else: not everything that flickers on a screen is the whole truth. Some truths live off camera, where people are still allowed to be people, and love is still allowed to be quiet.